Hello guys, this is your Uncle Bigfish, and on this video we'll be talking about the Eclipse. Now this is one of those classes that a lot of people might underestimate due to the current meta revolving around foreguard breakers and grabbers. This class has been overshadowed for quite some time. However, since the changes that she received around 3-4 weeks ago, I do think that this class has some viability. And what kind of viability I'm talking about? I'm talking about fucking damage. Nothing else. Just fucking damage. Like, this class had surprised me many times over, ever since its inception in 2021. This class has been amazing. And what kind of amazing I'm talking about? This class had just half sheer damage. And this damage is not meant to be taken lightly. I think that is no longer a secret that this is the class with the highest combo damage in the game. This is the class known as the single strongest wall breaker in the game. This class's damage is just way above any other class by a steep margin. And for us to understand what kind of damage I'm talking about, we first have to understand a couple things. One, what exactly is Royal Fencing Lunge? Now this skill is essentially your this is your stab, and just by seeing it right now you're probably, what are you talking about? That's some low ass damage, just like 435%. Multiply that by 4, that's like nothing compared to the likes of Reckoning or something else with way higher base power. Now, put that into your thought just for a second. Now let's just count level 3 Royal Fencing Lunge. 435 times 4. Now this by itself is already 1,740. And if I recall correctly, we can still get more levels. How many levels? About 7 more levels, and we'll just check here roughly how much it does at level 10. So 435 to 449, that's give or take around 15%. So it gets 15% per level, so we go 15 times 7. That's gonna give us 105. So we can add this to the top, making this 540%, and we'll multiply this by 4, making this skill essentially a 2,160% damage. So put that first in your thought, 2,160%. Okay, till here, can you guys understand? I hope that you guys can, because if you guys don't, this will be pretty hard to understand going forwards. So this skill by itself has 2,160% damage. This is not great by any means. Any other class of stab does pretty much more. The Paladin's version, at least, Sword of Judgment, has like 2,700. Primrose's Absolute Zero does 2,800. And this one is not great. Now, what does this do? When you hit this, when you hit something, means this thing touches something, you reduce the cooldown by 1.5 seconds. However, that reduction becomes 3 seconds while you're on your passive Singularity Break. Now, for us to understand what it does is, so essentially speaking, if you have no passives on, this thing will go down to about 3.5 second cooldown. That's it. 3.5 second cooldown will be this class's cooldown if you have no passive. So if you have 2 charges and you use both, means after roughly about a second, the third one will be off cooldown. However, if you have Singularity Break, means essentially this class, this cooldown has 0 cooldown, because you reduce the cooldown by 3 seconds and the second charge by another 3 seconds. So you're buying off about 6 seconds. If you include with the animation, that's 1 second for 2 of them. So this thing buys off about 7-second cooldown of the skill. So after the second lunge, the third one will be off cooldown, so you can use it again after Singularity Break. Up until this point, things are fine. It's not a big deal. 2,160% damage is not a big deal. You can use it 3 times, so what? There's many other skills that you can do the same. So till here, everything's fine. And now let's talk about Royal Fencing Sweep, which will be this one. This thing hits twice, it goes like that. And basically, it has pretty high damage. How high? Let's check. Now, it's gonna be 563 minus 546. That will give us 17%. So, 17%, we'll go 17 times 7, that will give us 119. So essentially speaking, this will be 119 plus 546 for the max damage at level 10, giving it 665. This thing hits twice, so this thing will be multiplied by 2, making each hits 1,330%. And since this thing hits twice as well, so you'll multiply that by 2, giving this 2,660%, making this about 500% more damage than lunge. Now, this will be your 2 stabs, and remember those numbers, 2,660 for sweep, and 2,160 for lunge. Now, we'll talk about why this class became the #1 wall breaker in the game. For that, we need to understand what her passive does. Recover 50% of Star's Breath upon skill use. So when you use any skill, you'll basically increase your Star Breath meter by 50%. By using 2 skills, you'll have Star's Breath active for the next skill. So the third skill you cast will have Star's Breath passive on it. Now, what does Star's Breath do? Evasion status applied when preparing the next skill. This means that you have iframe while you're almost casting your next skill. This is not applied in the arenas, obviously, because that'll be too broken. However, what makes this really damn strong is this. Increase next skill damage by 50%. For you guys that don't understand what that means, basically, it adds half of the damage of the skill that you're casting, making any skill you cast 150 times more painful than what it normally does. Plus, it also gives you PvP damage dealt, which will be on the last bit of the calculation, making your damage potentially game-breaking. Now, this on itself isn't really a big deal. There are many classes with this mechanic. For example, the Paladin's version, the called Smite, does pretty much the same. However, it gives Spell Amp instead of added bonus damage. Spell Amp gives 20%. This one gives 50%. Now, you can argue Spell Amp classes with skill damage percentage does get it for a set of duration, while this one only like boost one skill. How is that amazing or anything? Well, for you to understand that, we first need to understand how damage works. Well, the way damage works is every class have at least 2 stabs. Some classes only have 1. For example, the Primrose, she's only got 1 absolute 0, and that's pretty much her stab. What is stab? Stab is super tier attacking power, or a skill that deals the most damage in a class's arsenal. That is called stab. And there's most classes only have 1 or 2. I'm joking. Most classes have 2. Some classes have 3. Some have 4. And there's Eclipse with 2. Now, for you to understand what this does is, you basically gain 50% on your stab. And the way damage works is, this spell amplification or damage amplification is worth most on a stab skill, because a stab skill have high base power. So when you add 50% on top of that huge stab damage, you get the most value. Because if you add 50% to a low damage skill, it's still gonna be low damage. For example, I'll add 50% to, say, Remise. This skill only have 336%. This hits twice, so about 700%, give or take, 660% damage. You add 50% on top of that, it's only gonna give it another 336% damage, giving this barely 1000% damage. But imagine if I put that on something like Lunge with 2160. This potentially becomes a bonus 1080% damage, making this skill with only 2160% base power suddenly to a 3240. That's a huge, steep increase in damage. Now, what became of Eclipse that made the damage game-breaking? For that, we need to understand what Singularity Break is. Now, if you use Star's Breath 5 times, when you first enter Arena, you'll have full Star's Breath. So you can just use any skill, and you can use your buff, and that will increase your Star Breath to max again, and you can basically just activate 2 Star Breath in under 2 seconds. And you just need to use another 6 more skills to trigger Singularity Break. Now, what does this do? Well, for that to understand, you need to see skill damage plus 50% for 5 seconds. Means any skill you have, whatever the skill is, I don't care. Whatever the skill is, it'll be amplified by 50%. Now that is crazy. Why? Because there's no class in the game with that kind of amplification. Literally, 0. There's no class in the game with 50% spell amp. There's no such thing. Like in this game, it doesn't exist. Like that doesn't exist in this game. You can't. But this class gets that. See, now it has 50% spell amp for everything. Does not stack with Star's Breath damage increase. Now this one means that you basically get Star's Breath passively for every skill, which is already fucking broken. I mean, you're dealing basically 50% more damage than anyone else, so you are gonna hit like a truck. Plus, we have an included PvP damage dealt passive, so this will also increase your damage, giving this another basically 55%, basically speaking. Damage does not stack with Star's Breath damage increase effect. However, what makes this broken is this next skill. Star's Breath recovery rate at 100%. Now what does this mean? This means that every single skill you cast for 5 seconds will have Star's Breath. So basically speaking, for 5 seconds you have 50% spell amp. If that's not crazy enough, read this. 50% damage of Royal Fencing Thrust Remise Meteor Flash Royal Fencing Lunge. So, this thing pierces through whatever. This thing pierces through forward guard. That is crazy. And why is that? Because means that forward guard can no longer block the skill's damage. The full damage will still pull through, and only the added damage from the spell amp is not included. Means the base power of the skill will still pierce through forward guard. This is something you need to understand, because this is a big deal, guys. So, let's do all that again. For 5 seconds, you have amplified damage by 50%, plus 10% PvP damage dealt to anything. So now, imagine what kind of damage Lunge is gonna do. I'm quite sure that there is some bugs in whatever I'm gonna show you after this, cause you won't believe me how much damage this class can do. This class has a staggering 62,000% damage with its risky combo damage. Its risky combo has a maximum damage roll of 62,000%. And that is fucking crazy. Why? Because the second highest combo damage, that obviously belongs to the Warlord, only does 54,000%. So this is like 8,000 more, which is fucking insane. That is crazy. And I'm sure there are some bugs in this, because the kind of damage that this thing is dealing is, how do I put this nicely? It's a bit stupid. And in order to explain this in a way that's the least sarcastic, I think they fucked up on does not stack with Star's Breath damage increase effect. I genuinely believe that I don't know what the fuck happened, but I think this does stack. Cause I think you guys should just watch the rest of the video. But essentially speaking, by using 3 lunges, which only cost you 1.5 seconds, you can cast 3 lunges in 1.5 seconds, you will potentially do something stupid. Like, let's count that real quick. Give me a second. So, 2160. We'll multiply that by 2. And if this crits, then you multiply that by another 2.15. So this by itself has a base power of 9,288. Let's say for a second that this is not the case. In a perfect world, this wouldn't exist, because it's obviously too broken. But just for the sake of this video, let's count what if this isn't the case. So we'll do 2160 times 50%. And we're gonna add that to the base power. It gives us 3,240. And we'll add crit on top of it. So 2.15. 2 times 15. This will have the base power of about 5,724. And you can do this 3 times. So in 1.5 seconds, you're dealing like 15,000% damage. This is where things go crazy. 15 6,000% damage in 1.5 seconds. Just from lunge. We haven't talked about any other skill. We haven't talked about sweep, the other stab. It's just from lunge. But to be perfectly honest, this is far away from the truth. Because what's actually happening is something like 2160 plus 2160 times 2.15%. So this is doing something like 6,800% damage. I know you guys might disbelieve, you guys might be in disbelief. What the fuck? That's not true. 6,800 damage? What the fuck? Are you for real, uncle? Are you lying here? No, I'm not. 6,804% damage with one lunge. And you're gonna multiply this by another 3. Because you remember, you have 3 of them. And this isn't all, because if you remember, you also have increased PvP damage dealt by 10%. So you're gonna add another 10% on top of that, making this 17,701 from one skill. This is what potentially breaks the game, because there's no other class that can do this kind of damage in just this amount of time, making this the single strongest wall breaker in the game. And if you multiply this with branches, if you add AP increases and defense drops into the equation, well, you will have the Uncle Big Fish Big PP special combo that does a staggering 62,000% damage in a single stagger. I hope you guys enjoyed this stupid video of what BDM's head of development team has been cooking. I hope that this video will show you a little bit of feature into the mind of the sick man. Well, enjoy the rest of the video. Please don't vomit. Thank you, and have a good day.